say something I'm not supposed to say.
That's okay. That's the whole point.
The Islamic Republic of Iran.
Obama was the worst president in modern American history.
Yeah, the Jews control the media, yet all I see in the media.
Welcome to Unfiltered with Adam. I am here with my very special guest, screenwriter, director, sometimes actor, creator of one of the best television shows to have ever been put on TV, Entourage. Doug, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. What's happening?
Entourage was on HBO from 2004 to 11.
2003 or 4, I forget when we started.
Probably one of the most successful shows that HBO has ever done. You've made 2 films since then. Everybody that was a part of that show has gone on to do amazing things afterwards. One of the things that was very cool about Entourage was how it was such a community builder and how people would like gather in their homes to watch it together. I know that when I was in college, my fraternity would gather every night on Sunday to watch Sunday night HBO, starting with Entourage. What's that like for you, especially given like the strong Jewish overtones that were in the show? Because the show was extremely Jewish. I mean, you had the special Yom Kippur episode, you Ari obviously emanated like a very strong Jewish identity. What's that like for you, given the success of the show and the overtones?
I mean, it was very cool, obviously, to get the, country talking about it, some parts of the world talking about it, and to, kind of Ari's Jewish identity was really my Jewish identity, which is, more cultural than religious, and clearly was based on the background that I grew up. I grew up going to an Orthodox synagogue, even though I wasn't Orthodox at all. And we would sit through the 10-hour Yom Kippurs just because of guilt and because we thought it was the right thing to do, and because my parents, even though they weren't Orthodox either, did also. But I mean, those days are so memorable to me with my mother, making sure we didn't eat. And my mother dealt with 3 boys, and my father was really a fourth. And it was, from the second we woke up at 7 a.m., the complaining started about not eating as if we were starving, and going to, which my rabbi actually at the time was an amazing speaker, Rabbi Wahlberg. So that the only thing I ever enjoyed, because I never, even after 8 years of Hebrew school, couldn't speak a word of Hebrew, sadly, embarrassingly enough. His sermon was always something that was actually pretty amazing and worth listening to. But we would honestly sit there for hours and hours, as many religious people know, but we didn't understand a word that was going on. My parents didn't understand a word that was going on. It was an Orthodox synagogue with, the women on the other side of shul, which I still, I'm not a fan of. But culturally, Judaism has been very important to me. Israel has been very important to me, and it was important, the real Ari, which, not that he had anything creative to do with it, but his father was, very instrumental in, in the fight for Israel's independence in 48. So all of that stuff is important to me, and to get it into a show like this and to be able to, show that culture would be nice to do it today with all that's going on, and, realize that so many of the crazy people, especially at the colleges, who were loving Entourage, and still, by the way, the young people are watching it now, just seeing what's going on and seeing the anti-Semitism is pretty scary. So
one of the things that the show showed was how relevant the Jewish community, or prevalent the Jewish community is in Hollywood, and how much say, in a way, Jews do have on the creative process for filmmaking. And I mean, if you look at the history of the industry, many of these people were people that founded studios and were escaping anti-Semitic persecution.
Yeah.
What's it like being not just a Jew in Hollywood, but like a successful Jew in Hollywood that's shaped popular culture in a way? Because if anything, your show shaped popular culture for years. What's it like to see this societal change?
They just opened up this museum in Hollywood, the film museum, that basically left Jews out of the equation, which is, it's maddening, angering, terrifying, all at the same time. I mean, people like to forget that Jews, the reason that they founded Hollywood, which they did, was because they weren't allowed in other industries. So
kind of like our country clubs.
Yeah, exactly. So like the persecuted minority, because this group figured out a way to be successful, is now becoming a persecuted minority again. And because they, you know, again, I hate the terms that like they have success, because I have plenty of Jewish friends who have no success and no money, and we all do. But
Well,
as a,
also, if you know your story, wasn't so easy for you.
you know what, I don't want to complain about my story, because you know, obviously I had a lot of luck on my side and things went well for me. I don't think my Judaism had a single thing to do with success or non-success. But now you're just seeing a weird backlash. And you know, Hollywood, I hate to even say this term, because you know, racism, you know, 50 years ago, it was a different world. People didn't know other people. You know, there were wars we were coming off of, and people had biases against every group. And obviously, people have always had biases against Jews, but Jews had biases against this one, and this one had biases against this one. But at the end of the day, America had very strong biases against a lot of people and a lot of foreigners that weren't them. And when Jews and Italians and Irish came over, they had their biases. But some of the things now that are going on in Hollywood, you just feel this sort of undercurrent that, well, all of the repression of minorities in Hollywood, you know who really did that? It was the Jews, because they founded Hollywood. But the fact of the matter is Hollywood reflected the culture of America. And yes, in some ways it shaped it. And I think some of the reckoning now, which is very good, and to see, you know, different groups have opportunities that they may not have had even 10 years ago, of course, is a good thing. But once you start trying to revise and come up with who is actually to blame for these situations, you're just going through a very dangerous and very ignorant way of thinking. Because we all know that every group of people pretty much has had persecution somewhere at some point. And really, you know, as cliche as it sounds, it would be nice to just get to where we're not groups and everybody is a human and we're all trying to make good choices. But that just doesn't seem to be what's happening right now. So
It's so funny. You know, I grew up, you know, in the 90s and the early 2000s. And I felt like I grew up in this era. You know, my whole family's from Chicago. Every kid I know worshiped Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Dennis Rodman. You
yeah.
know, and I feel like I grew up in this age prior to Obama being elected, where all these divides were fading away.
I have a 22-year-old and a 20-year-old, and I honestly believed, especially when they were younger and they had Black friends, Hispanic friends, I really believed that by the time they were 15 years old, you would no longer say, "Oh, you know my Black friend, you know my, my Chinese friend, you know my Jewish friend." I really believed it, and they have. It's wild. I don't know who the they is. I hate the word they, because they is usually us, but I don't know how this went about, but it's been a remarkable setback as far as I'm concerned. And
I mean, it seems like it's all kind of tied into an anti-Semitic, anti-American agenda that's been like very slow at play.
I mean, I hate to always like put us in the place of the victims, because so many groups have persecution, and we've seen, you know, alongside Asians, what's been going on in the colleges right now. And of course, let's be honest, I'll never know what it's like to be a Black kid getting pulled over by a police officer. I get it. But you know what? I've been pulled over by police officers and treated like shit. And you know, the reality.
Have you ever been pulled over for having Black people in your car?
I have not.
That's happened to me before in Ohio when I was in high school. You and I are never going to say, "Hey, we got to take a different route because there are too many traffic lights here," and somebody could say, "We're going to run a red light or a stop sign." You know, you and I don't think like that.
But I think, you know, I think the world right now should be trying to get people to understand, you know what? There are a lot of cops, and again, I'm a big supporter of police. But at the same time, I know it's a very underpaid profession. It's a very untrained profession. You have humans just like anywhere else who, you know, have anger issues and depression issues, which is why it's the highest suicide rate, I think, of any job in the United States. I don't know how it is in Israel. But I think that everybody should be teaching their children not how to avoid police, but how to get home if God forbid, not God forbid, if you're pulled over by a cop. And again, I've had cops that like have treated me like dog, where my pride and my, you know, own personality wants to go, "Hey, you." But at some point you go, "This guy's got a gun. I don't know what his life's all about, but I want to get home to my family and my kids. And I think that the media for the last 5, 10 years has just made us feel, and certainly, and I get it, by the way, if I was a black kid in America and watched the news every day, I would go, if you see a cop, run. And I think the media has done an incredible disservice, the same way they've done an incredible disservice to what's going on in the war. And it's a different universe now. And again, I will never get into the war in terms of, oh, Israel, they have to do this. I don't have any idea what the military solution should be. I just know if someone was launching firecrackers at my house, I'd be over there with guns. And if their neighbors weren't helping, I would, so would everybody. And it's wild to see, people go, oh, well, okay, the Palestinians are now justified to rape and torture people because they're repressed. Okay, but Israel's not justified in responding for their people being, it makes no sense. And at the end of the day, I think, and it's weird that I was talking about this with people before October 7th, because again, Israel was founded as a secular country. And we know, if you're not stupid, that somehow, without being racist, we have to keep a Jewish majority. Otherwise, the country won't exist. Anyone who's not dumb understands that. And anyone who just wants to say, well, why should a Jewish majority country exist? Well, because it was a place that was nothing, that they built into something. And there's plenty of room all over the world. And there's 25 Muslim countries. And I get it. There are people that live there, but we lived in Germany and Poland and we're thrown out of all sorts of places, and we're not trying to get back there. So everybody has to move forward. However that is possible, everybody has to go. And I think for Israel's security, we have to get rid of our religious lunatics, because they're just as bad as the religious lunatics on the other side. And we have to find a way to peace, because I don't think this is sustainable. I would never speak about the military option or how many people are dying, because I have no idea what the right answer is. And we're living in this weird world where you're just not supposed to have wars ever.
I feel like people have never watched Born on the 4th of July, Platoon, Saving Private Ryan, or any type of medium that has really shown how terrible war is and the realities of what war is. And it's like all of these journalists, other than maybe Douglas Murray, really have never been to war zones, do not understand the types of decisions that are made. I remember a couple months ago when there were hostages that were killed from friendly fire and the world exploded, but the reaction in Israel was the families of the hostages that were killed went and met with the soldiers and the families of the soldiers and said, you cannot be blamed for this. We understand how difficult the situation that you're in.
I think the ideology has really spread through, most of the writers now, and this is not like I came up with this thought. I've read this and I agree with it. But most of the writers 50 years ago were working class people, and now they're elite Ivy League students who, live in fantasy land. And what's funny, again, I don't want to generalize everybody, because we know the media likes to stoke everything on every side. And I know that for the large portion of this situation, most people still, believe Israel's in the right and believe the terrorists are a bigger
that's the
problem than
misconception.
Jews. Yeah.
That's the misconception, though, because you see people you see the minority extremists being given airtime. You see the minority extremists in California the National Guard's not being called. It's not being called on these college campuses. It's almost like we're empowering them by not shutting them down.
We're doing more than empower them, because it does start to change thoughts and opinions. And honestly, even my own thoughts start to go, maybe there should be no wars. Maybe there should be no borders. Maybe nobody deserves to own a country. But I always go to the same place. The reality is, as bad as America and Israel might be, and there's a reason why half of the people in both countries hate their government, is because...
Wait a minute, hold on. It is a very patriotic or Zionist thing to hate your government, okay?
You know what?
Wait a minute, as Mark Cuban says, there's nothing more patriotic than paying your taxes, but finding out how to pay as little as possible is even more patriotic.
And you know what? He's brilliant and he's right. And the truth is that what I always come back to is Of course, war is terrible. And of course, I don't deserve to die anymore for people who hate Donald Trump or Joe Biden than anyone in Israel or anyone in Gaza deserves to die because of what their leaders are doing. Okay. But of course, it's a terrible thing. And, it's why I say, though, back to like what Hollywood was when Asians weren't really put on the screen or were shown in caricatures, stereotypes. We honestly were all just in China, in Japan, in America. We were like, we hate these people. They're our enemy.
Listen, in Hollywood, they were afraid to put Asians and Black people on screen. I remember, there was that huge controversy when they were filming Ocean's 11, the original one, and they were all throwing their hands in at the end. And Sammy Davis Jr. put his hand on top, and the director tried to say, okay, we need to reshoot it. We need to cut it. And Frank goes, there's nothing wrong with the shot. It's perfect. Even like little things like that. A black hand was controversial at one point on camera.
Yeah, everybody can look back and, I say this about, about the Holocaust. We can all sit back and go, you know what I would have done? You have no idea what you would have done. And I would like to think, no, I wouldn't have been a capo, I hope, but I might have been.
Well,
I wouldn't be tough enough to tell you what I would do. But the reality is the only way to, in my mind, the only way to make this situation better. And people go, how do you kill an ideology of Hamas? You can't kill the ideology of Hamas, but what you can do is take away their weapons so that it's words they're using more than weapons. And again, everybody now, and I really do listen to so much stuff about this. And when you hear the argument on the other side, it's almost impossible to argue with them. When they go, it is not fair to have an Israeli majority state, no other country would do that. The US wouldn't do that. On the face of it, it doesn't sound fair. But you know what? They're surrounded by 25 Muslim countries. It's just a tough argument because you can listen to people say, oh, Jews, they just want to talk about how they're victims and how this could happen and that can happen. And again, I think we have to ignore the noise and we have to fight because we know what happened last time and nobody's going to stand up for us. We're watching it happen around the world right now. And everybody, again, I hear the other argument on the other side. It's ridiculous to say Jews need Israel or there's going to be another Holocaust. All right, whatever. I don't think we are willing to take the risk of hearing the other side of it. We see what happens to Jews in every single Muslim country. We see what happens to everybody in every single Muslim country, and God willing, somehow there is some type of reformation or something in their culture. And again, I am not speaking about all Muslims at all, but there is clearly a radical problem and it is growing and growing. And I think that we don't have any choice but to stand up to it. And again, like I said, I believe there has to be a two-state solution at some point. I don't believe anything else is sustainable, but I don't know how you do that. I just don't know how you do that. It's not necessarily about politics for me, and morality is a difficult thing because, like I said, I've listened to the other side. And the arguments, they're really, in my mind, their ideology is some utopia that does not exist. It's some
and never existed.
Yeah, and never will. And
their big thing is that there was some garden of Palestine here before the Jews showed up, except the Romans raped the land. And for 2,000 years, it was completely uninhabitable. And we came back and we made the desert bloom.
But even that is like, it's so aside from the point. It's like, we are where we are in 2024. Like there's just, again, they go backwards and forwards. You were asking about Hollywood. I'm on a chat with like 800 extremely influential, powerful Hollywood people. But you see some differing of opinions, but for the most part, that group is on the side that we're on. But there are a lot of Jews in Hollywood that aren't. There's jerk-offs like Seth Rogen who years ago was
has
talking
no
about
idea what the he's talking about. I wanted to kick him in his balls. Same with Jonah Hill.
First, the not knowing what he's talking about is, and again, they laugh at you, just like you're saying. In Europe, they would have in 1935 when you go, Seth, they're going to throw your fat ass in the same cattle car as everybody else, and they're going to take your head off the same way, whether you think Israel has no right to exist or you don't. I think that a lot of times liberals just become so ideologized that it's impossible to even have a conversation with them because there's nobody who would see a dead child on the TV and not feel bad for it. We've sat and debated all of these different issues, except for there's a simple way to end this war. Hand over your weapons, hand over the hostages, and lay down. And that's it, and it's so annoying that, I mean, Hamas has they've never even, which is wild to me. They've never even pretended they wanted like
since
something
1987.
Else. Bill Maher used to talk about, like, he got canceled for saying they're not cowards. And the truth is they're not, because they have, in my mind, they've won this by accident, and they haven't even tried to re-manipulate the media to go, you know what? If Israel would just give they could say anything, because now what they're really talking about is the right of return, which, of 7 million people, so they could start a civil war inside this place and kill everybody. It's such an irrational argument led by
that's the root of Palestinian rejectionism, is the right of return. That's what's used to reject the entire peace process.
But at the end of the day, obviously that's never going to happen without, like, absolutely millions of people dying. And it's irrational, and it's not realistic, and it serves no purpose. And while everyone just keeps going, I can't believe Israel's killing all these people, which, again, I'm not sure they should be or not. I'm not going to even waste 1 minute of saying I know what the hell they should have done. I just know that nobody would live next door to what those people are doing. And now we're living in this world where I saw someone say, who are we with our Western values to tell them they can't build these tunnels? And you just go, okay, there's nothing left to talk. Who are we now?
When you're paying your taxpayer money and it's going to building those tunnels, that's when you get to say, don't build those tunnels.
All right, no, but again, they don't even care about the taxpayer. It's just like
$16 billion.
It's
$16 billion.
It's going into other people's cultures, and you now see it. The president of Iran dies, and you see, like, intellectuals talking about how, okay, that's their culture. He's a conservative in that culture. They don't talk about that. The rape of women is okay, and honor killings still happen.
No, and that the fact that
they
the
marry
Persians
child brides, like, but that's their culture.
A lot of people don't know is that the Iranians consider the Islamic Republic regime an occupying force.
Yeah.
That, and everything that you're saying, they had a moment of silence in Congress the other day for him. It's so insane. This is the government that took American hostages in 1979, has been killing Americans since then.
But that's what I'm saying. We're losing our minds, and why things, to me, are so dangerous. And again, I don't want to get into American politics, because I really I despise both of these candidates. I mean, despise both of them. But to see,
you don't like them at all, huh? Not at all.
But to see,
big fan,
to see that this country, what has gone on, has taken, in my mind, and you can't say anything without people yelling at you. I believe that I am a classic liberal who wants all good people to live in good places. But I am not a person who is going to accept that I somehow was privileged by the color of my skin at birth. Meanwhile, both sides hate my guts because I'm brown to the right and I'm white to the left. And, so I just think there's no way to win any of those arguments, because there are a large number of people who just want chaos, and they believe that's the right thing. And do I not believe that America has done terrible things, including the Shah of Iran, who's horrible and awful, and we kept in power and was brutal. So I don't know what any of the answers are. I just know that I'm not willing to debate in which culture is a better culture, the culture of repression and the culture of torture. I'm not willing to debate in that. And unfortunately, I try to tell people that the thing that we all have to do is you have to take care of your own and then start spreading out and try to, fix the rest of the world.
That's the preferential love argument.
And I think that's what most Jews have done, which is why in our small group we've been successful, even while facing so much, aggression against us. But there's really, like, when I'm reading these things now, that I know where they're going, where Hollywood museums are showing all of the racism that existed and claiming, well, who started it? Meanwhile, they wanted to remove Jews from the founding of Hollywood, when we know that they were. And again, there are bad Jews out there. There are people who rip people off. There are people in the music business who are horrible, but it's not because they're Jewish. It's just because
Just because they're shitty people.
because humans are bad for the most part, and you put them in, which is why I say, and I do sympathize with anybody else. I sympathize with a 7-year-old Palestinian kid who wakes up every day and his parents tell him Jews are evil. I don't know what I would have thought. I have friends I know who would have gotten out and gotten guns if someone told them to go shoot, the Italians across the street or the Irish across the street. So it's pretty easy to manipulate children, but how do you stop it and how do you get to a better place? And the only thing that I can come up with is you disarm people who want to kill random people. That's it.
Exactly.
It's where real genocides start constantly, and it starts in the media. And the funny thing, again, it's a waste of energy to even discuss it. But yeah, the Jews control the media. Yet all I see in the media,
I don't mean to worry anybody when I say this, but like I'm afraid there's going to be a major attack on either the Jewish community or the American infrastructure, so that the Jews get blamed before the election. I mean, if you think about it, July is going to be a great time because families are out celebrating America. Like,
I have zero doubt about it. I think that we are braced for an attack, whether it's to blame the Jews or just because, again, these people, they want to do what they want to do, and they really don't even seem to have. While the idiots in America and around the world have joined in to create their cause as an intellectual cause, they haven't even tried. Like, I would have thought Hamas would have started manipulating this, said, you know what we want? Like, list some demands that are crazy even. They haven't even done that because they just keep saying the same thing. We don't want anything. We just want to kill all of you, and they want to kill all the Americans also and everybody else. But I don't know. It's a bad situation. And I have, again, while not being a very religious Jew, I have thought this my entire life. My friends all know I've always been the person. The first script I ever wrote was about a son of a Holocaust survivor joining the Jewish Defense League. And, people are like, what are you writing about? And I always used to tell my friends, even though none of us are very religious, like I've always been very obsessed with Jewish persecution and what we've gone through, and that I don't believe it's ever going to disappear because we are. It's not because, it's because
we have a lot of American Jewish leaders who really feel that because of the uniqueness of the American experience, that things that we're seeing could never happen. What's the main way your life has changed since October 7th?
Well, I have a new baby, so who's a half Jewish baby.
Mazel tov.
Thank you. And my life has changed that all I do is worry about the future for her. And
so that leads me to my second question. If you could teach young Jews one thing right now, what would you tell them? What would you teach them? What would you want them to know?
I don't know what I want to teach my daughter. I know, like, part of me feels very guilty that I had a child now that has to bear this burden. But it's just tough.
It's because it's so true.
That my daughter has to bear this burden, and again, I grew up too with my parents always like, you're going to marry Jewish, which I did in my first wife, and now my fiance is not Jewish, and I don't have any guilt about that, except for now I've put her in a situation that she doesn't even understand what she just walked into. Having a child, and me thinking like there's two people firing shots at a Toronto girls' school, and there's actually people supporting it, because maybe I'm freaking crazy. I don't think 5 people would come out and say, oh, that's great, if they saw 2 people shooting at a Russian school right now or a Chinese school.
No, it's exactly the same thing.
So it's crazy.
I want to thank you for your candor, and I think that a lot of what you say is very on point. And I also want to thank you for helping bring a normalization of being a Jew into popular culture the way you did for so many young Jews that are my age. I mean, we really saw what a Jewish man could become with Entourage and how important the culture is. And I don't think you probably get thanked enough for that. I think you may not even realize how many young people you helped cultivate. So on behalf of me, just as a fan of the show who was so enthralled and influenced by it, thank you, man. And thank you for standing up for the Jewish people.
I appreciate it. It was a very important part of it. And I was very lucky that I got no pushback from HBO about any of that stuff. I could do whatever I wanted. So it was nice. The bar mitzvah episodes. And,
oh my God. But the social commentary on it was so great. And the Yom Kippur episode, in my opinion, I can't remember if you directed that episode, but it showed the contrast of the different types of Jews so well.
Probably my favorite episode of
oh, really?
Yeah, and
I'm a
it
bad
meant
Jew.
lot.
What do you want?
It meant yeah, Shelley.
On that note, Doug, I want to thank you so much for joining me on Unfiltered with Adam. Hopefully we'll do another episode where we just go back and forth and do Ariisms for a solid 40 minutes because it's
Yeah, I would
totally
have to remember
possible.
them.
Daddy ain't a breath, man. What?
Now you're gonna have to atone for ratting Daddy out, baby. What, you think God wants my breath to smell?
Christ, it is Yom Kippur.
Look who just said Jesus Christ. That is the beauty of Yom Kippur. As long as you apologize by sundown, doesn't matter what you do. You're at a place where you can meet a nice Jewish girl, Arthur. Come on. We were at temple too. This is time sensitive. God will understand. We all have to take care of our own. He's more of a neurotic Jew than you are. I'm not even making a call. I'm just checking messages.
In 4 minutes, Ari, when the sun is down.
Look at your uncle.
Shelley.
Sorry, I'm a bad Jew. Shoot me.